2 years ago I styled a little Christmas tree into this Cascade. Yes, this was one straight tree and I made a Cascade out of it. I produced a little video which I published, and then I said it might take a year before I can take this wire off, at least. Well, it's been 2 years now. Time to take the wire off. I'm not going to leave it unwired because these spruces, they'll come straight back up. I'm going to have to remove all the old wire, all the old wrapping, prune it back, wire it out. Now 2 years ago I had this tree completely frozen on the bench, so I needed a hammer work to make a little hole in the ground to really put this aluminium wire on. We're now in for a new bout of frost, and I actually want to try to get this off and rewired before the frost hits, but we'll see. Just in case you don't want to wait until the end of the video to see the final result, this is it. You can now switch off and go to watch another video, or watch this one continue because it is an interesting video. At that time I wrapped the trunk into, I think, cocoa fiber, so it wouldn't break in the extreme bending that I was doing at the time. And as you can see, I put quite thick aluminium wire on there, which is now actually not easy to get off. I'm a little bit disappointed. Now part of this cocoa has completely deteriorated. Look at this, it's just falling apart. But most of it is still pretty good. So I now need to gently take it off, because that's no longer needed. And I don't want to constrict the trunk any more than I have to. Wow! That took almost as long as putting it on. This is all gotten really full. Spruces, of course, grow frequently in places with lots of snow and ice. So in winter they get a massive amount of snow and ice on them. So the branches bend down. And as spring comes, the tree tries to push the branches back up. Quite natural, right? And at the tips it pushes up. So in winter the branches are quite flexible. You can quite easily shape these trees in winter because they're all set up for this big load of snow and ice. But that also means that in spring, as they start growing, it really starts to push back up. So that's also why I don't believe that this trunk line, which seems to hold reasonably well, is going to stay in if I now don't rewire. So I'm going to unwire completely, rewire completely, prune, do a styling. Is this entertaining, watching somebody unwire? I doubt it. Maybe you should do something useful, like subscribing if you haven't subscribed. I've got over 300 videos on my channel. People seem to like them. I do get nice comments, and I do every once in a while try to answer my comments, so be patient if you don't get a reply. I will try to go through every single one and answer every single one. It's just sometimes it gets really busy in my life, but also on the channel, and then it takes a little bit longer. All unwired, and to be honest, I'm not too disappointed. It seems to hold its shape, but you see this very clearly, right? These are all these branches that have come back up, and now I need to go through. There are places like in here where there's a lot of inner growth, and I'm going to remove everything that's here at the base of these branches to facilitate wiring later on. I'm going to thin out everywhere where you have more than one branch coming off. Like here you have a very nice branch, but there's quite a few smaller branches here, and I can just remove one of these here in the middle and do that throughout the tree. So this is reasonable, but this is quite long, right? This has grown out, and I can now remove the center stalk, and I'm just keeping the one that is growing horizontally, aiding of course later on in the wiring out. So if I now bend these down a little bit, what you see is there's a lot of old needles here growing on this branch, and I can just gently pluck these off, greatly facilitating wiring, but also reducing the number of buds that will still pop on this branch. And now this branch is completely clean, ready to be completely wired again. Here. So we have this branch that's growing upwards, quite full with lots and lots of side branches, and I need to decide how long is it going to be. Once it is wired out, basically all this is too long, and I can just keep one of these side branches. So I'm removing a number of them. This is a long side branch with nice little buds on here. So I'm shortening it to the buds, so that at the end of this branch there's still buds after pruning. This way I don't get a dead end here, I just get a bifurcation. And what I'm going to wire is I'm going to wire at least this main branch, and then the side branches I will decide once the main branch is in place. And now with most of the fluff gone, I can rewire the main trunk. And as usual, I'm just going to push this into the ground if I can, to anchor it a little bit. And then yeah, just try to get it around the trunk without bending the trunk too much, without pushing any branches off. And this is one of those jobs where actually having an additional pair of hands would be quite useful. But once the first loop is around the trunk, it gets easier. But still not something very easy. And in case you were wondering, yes, I did wire it in the opposite direction. So the wire is now spiraling against the grain that I used before. Now this is a fairly tight bend, which I still want to get a little bit tighter. So I'll use a little bit of tension wire here and see whether I can just rewire the whole tree. See whether I can get a wire in between here somewhere. That would be optimal. Compact. And then trying to grab the wire, pull it in and turn. Now for wiring, I'm at the moment using 2 mils of aluminium. Again, trying to go against the direction that I was wiring before, so that if there's any wire bite in the bark, I reduce the visibility. And this is 2 mils, right? I am going to have to remove a lot of needles and branchlets, but I prefer to do that as I am positioning the branches, because at that point I know what I will need and what I will not need. It's really cold. It's only 2 or 3 degrees above zero. So in Fahrenheit that would be about 35, 36 Fahrenheit. So my fingers are not really doing what I wanted to do. But yeah, if you want nice bonsai, you have to work on them. And if you want to work on them while it is an optimal time, well, for spruces that is in winter, that means miserable weather. Getting really frozen here. So I think I'm not going to finish wiring today, but I've wired all these main branches, which can now be coarsely set. And then all the side branches I'll do tomorrow. Hopefully it is a little bit warmer then. And if not, maybe I'll just switch on the heater here. And as said, I'm not going to create a new design for this tree. I'm just setting the branches again to create a nice pattern. And all these will need to be wired out later on. The top is going to be quite difficult because it's not fully grown yet. It really needs to fill this whole space. Oh, this is not wired. Then I think most of these main branches are now set, so the general shape should be pretty good. I can go inside, get myself warm, and tomorrow do the rest of the wiring. Now there's another one. So I've started here with the fine wiring, and what you see is that now I'm getting these pads of foliage here, and I'm going to do this all throughout the tree. I'm using very thin aluminium wire, and basically what I'm doing is I'm not doing anything but, so let's see if I can show that here on camera. What you see here is this is a nice continuation of the main branch. It has quite a few branches here at the end, but the inside is quite bare. There's a little dead branch here that I can remove. Here I've got a nice side branch with lots and lots of side branches again. Don't need all that, so I'm just going to remove this extension. You see how I pruned last year there, and the side bud has popped and started to grow, but I don't need this whole extension, so I'm just going to remove it. Now I'm left here again. This has been pruned and a bud at the base grew, so this can go. And now it's already a lot cleaner, and now I can still decide, do I want a triferbification? Do I want to use this as a side branch with 2 branches, or just as the continuation with a side branch? I'm going to do the latter, just to clean it out. Now this is all clean. This is pretty clean. And we get here at the base and we see there's a branch and there's a side branch with multiple branches. Again, I pruned here, and now at the base new branches have popped. And there's a branch in the back, this one. I could remove all of this. Do I lose a lot if I remove it? I don't think so. And that is what I'm going to do, just remove this thing. And now this is ready for a bit of wire. Now I need to decide, how am I going to wire it? Well, how am I going to wire it? I always like to wire 1 piece of wire, 2 branches, right? And I want to wire in parallel to what I already have wired. So if we take this one, the wire here is very close to the attachment, so I'm going to go on the other side. Not optimal, but that's what I'll do. And just follow this along until I now reach this side branch. I wire this out, and I wire one of these little branchlets with it, and then the one here on top. I'm on the wrong side of this branch to really show you. There we go. And again, gently on the branchlet, try not to squeeze the foliage too much. And then this one here should really have come up on the other side, but as said, I wired the thicker wire a little bit too tight. And now this is also set. And now that this is set, I can say, well, this little side branch going down I'm taking off, keeping it a little bit cleaner, aligning these into one foliage pad, and this I'll just place a little bit to the side and down, so it continues in this pad. A little bit of movement on the attachments, so that every branchlet has its own space. And just like that, this pad is pretty much wired. For now, this is just the structure of the main branch, and I'll leave this for the time being. As seen from the front, this is now a nice homogeneous pad, slanted down a little bit and in line with the rest of the foliage that I already have in place here. This I bumped just now. This I bumped, needs to go down a little bit. So best is to just wire out all these pads and then start adjusting from the bottom to the top, because you will bump some of these side branches as you're wiring. So right, pretty pleased. I think this looks pretty good now. Of course, this now still needs a few years to mature, and it is going to go back into the garden now, and in spring I'll show a few shots as it is pushing. But for now, this is completely structured. It is thinned, about half of the tree is gone. Almost every single little branchlet has been wired and positioned. My fingers are frozen. I'll be back with you in spring. Really like how this is developing. You actually see already the tips of these branches pushing up again. Lots and lots of nice young growth on there. I could now of course start to tease out, and using scissors say, well, I'm going to remove some of these ground tips. Like this is really getting quite dense. But actually I'm going to wait a little bit. I'm going to allow these to extend until they're about 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters long. And then I'm going to pinch, then I'm going to prune, then I'm going to remove some branches which might actually be quite long and heavy. But that's not for this video. I think this is really nicely demonstrated how this can evolve into a nice cascade over time. It will need a few more rewiring. Spruce, after all, has the tendency to come back up with their branches. But this is pretty good, I think, considering this was a straight up Christmas tree just a few years ago. Spring is well on its way. Right. Basically what I now want to do is I want to go through and top to bottom, see whether there's nice backbudding like here, and I just remove the growing tip because there's buds behind it, the same here, because I don't want this top to get overly heavy, and I just have to trim these back. And of course places where I have just fine shoots that I do want to prune but I don't want to remove completely, just cleaning the growing tip out. This is a very big clump. And first of all I'm taking the center growing tip out. Then I'm going to look where all this comes from. This is all the same tree. They're all the same growing tip. And then I just gently, you see how I'm actually not gentle, really trying to grab the stem and pull the tip out. Or your fingers, if it's still very young. And of course here, the lower branches, I leave a little bit more, but also here, some of these intense clusters I thin out a little bit. And I try to remove things that grow up rather than things that grow down, because that aids in the direction that the branch develops. So things that come from the top, if they are superfluous, I remove over the things that are coming down from the bottom. Here I have two branches, and actually I could consider removing the split, but I'm just going to remove one of them and leaving the center in place because I want this length. Now this one goes away from that branch. You see how the needles on the branches that I wired last year have turned brown. I've not been gentle enough with this tree. This happens, but it is okay. I can gently pull them out. This is a job that will take maybe 15-20 minutes on a tree like this. Well worth doing, because it aids in refinement. What now is going to happen is here new buds will develop over the next couple of months, and over summer they will open up in a second flush, increasing ramification. And of course by removing the growing tips you reduce the amount of extension growth, and with that the thickening of the branches. You didn't think I'd let you go without a proper backdrop shot of this tree, right? Now, if you enjoyed this video and you haven't subscribed yet, this might be a good time to do this. And if you feel that I should show this tree and the previous video on this tree, so 5 years of development all the way from the original tree to this stage in one go, drop me a comment down below, let me know. Anyway, this was it. This was the video, this was the tree. This is the first making of this tree. This is my latest video, and I wish you happy watching and see you next time. This was Jelle, Growing Bonsai, the channel where I try to make growing bonsai simple. Cutting corners, yeah. Sometimes giving bad advice, yeah. But still fun and educational, I hope.